You're ready. Jane? We're ready. Okay, commissioners?
Yes.
All right, let's do this thing. Okay. Good morning. Today is Wednesday, February 1st, 2023, and we'd like to welcome everyone to the board meeting. We'll call this meeting to order at 9 o'clock. You can join today's board meeting via phone. Dial 971-254-3149. Conference ID 736-023-979#. Audio capabilities are listen only and are offered as a best effort to the public. Our meeting also is live streamed, and you can join us by going online to tctvonline.com and click on live broadcast. You would think I would have this all memorized by now. Before we can get started, I'd like to remind everyone to mute their phone. You can do this by pressing *6. Please unmute your phone when your agenda item is ready to be discussed. For those joining via computer, please unmute your microphone and turn on your camera when your agenda item is called. All others must remain muted with their cameras turned off. Thank you. Public comment. For those intending to provide public comment to the board, may attend in person or email submissions to publiccomments@co.tillamook.or.us. Public comments received by 12 p.m. on Tuesdays will be distributed to the board, posted online before the meeting, and become part of the public record. You may also provide public comments virtually by registering ahead of time. To register, please email publiccomments@co.tillamook.or.us by 12 p.m. on the Tuesday prior to the board meeting. Public comments can also be mailed to the Board of Commissioners Office, 201 Laurel Avenue, Tillamook, Oregon, 97141. For more information on public comment options, please visit the Board of Commissioners webpage. Do we have anyone signed up in the room, or has anyone registered online for public comments?
Yes, we have one person registered online, and he is online.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Debbie. We appreciate that. Okay, we have called the meeting to order, so welcome. We would request that anyone in the room with us today please sign our guest list, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Bell, will you lead us today?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so I'm going to just kind of let everyone know I'm going to move the agenda just a little bit. We have a staff person at the county that will need to be at another meeting, and so we're going to take item number 13, and we will actually move it to the top of our legislative administrative agenda. So just a FYI on that one. Item 13 will occur before item 6. But we are going to start our meeting with our presentation from the Lower Nehalem. Oh, public comments, sorry. Public comment, we just talked about that. We have someone online for public comment. Thank you for keeping me on track. Public comment, so we have, I believe it's James McKenna online, and I see James is with us. Can you start by stating your name and area of the county for the record, and then please share with us your public comment. We have 2 minutes for your comment.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the commissioners taking time to hear me out. Jim Mahana, I live on East Beaver Creek Road down South County. My public comments on item number 12, David McCall and Chris Lady have done a great job working with the tire disposal and getting work done on the abatement of unpermitted road approach that I bordered the property. The reason I want to talk today is those guys have done great work, but I am against extending the time period for the abatement. There's the tires on the property have been moved into a container, not all of them, but the container's still on the property. The abatement of the approach that was supposed to be done hasn't been done, and I sent David a bunch of photos of tires that are actually in that abatement. So there's a lot of the tires buried there. And then they, when they looked at the property, they were just looking at one part of the property. There's 50 plus tires on the other side of the creek on the other part of the property. So I guess where I'm going with this is there needs to be some precedence. This has been going on since 2019. All of the things that you listed needed to be done by the deadline, the abatement of the materials, and the unpermitted road approach, the removal and disposal of the tires, and showing the receipts of the tires. That hasn't been done, and I'm just saying that we keep pushing this back, and we gained a lot of ground with the work that these guys did, and now it seems like we're taking some steps backwards. Also, the actual landowner has never been contacted. They refused, they didn't pick up the certified letter, so we've been dealing with a family member and not the actual landowner. So the landowner at any time can say, hey, I'm not aware of all these things you're asking me to do. So I would like some, start doing the fine process or something that's got some teeth to get this cleared up and get that road approach out. And then, and they put in for a permit for a road approach now, and they haven't even taken out the unpermitted one that's got all the tires buried in it. So anyway, appreciate your time, you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jim. Thank you for coming. All right. Okay, now we will move forward with our presentation. And we should have with us today the Lower Nehalem Watershed Council Annual Report Presentation with Zach Mallon, Coordinator of the Lower Nehalem Watershed Council. Zach, are you with us this morning?
I don't see him online, Commissioner.
Okay.
I just texted him.
Okay, wonderful. Well, we will hold that item and keep an eye out for Zach, and we can go to that when he is able to be with us. Okay, all right, so we're just, like I said, we will put that one on pause for the moment, and we will go ahead and start through our legislative administrative agenda and keep an eye out for Zach. So with that, and the reorder that I've done, we will actually begin with item number 13, which is discussion and consideration of a multifamily rental housing grant number 2023-MHF-2 with Lisa Greiner for the Greiner Tillamook Project, Thomas J. Fiorelli Housing Coordinator, Community Development Department. Good morning, TJ.
Good morning, Commissioner Scar. Thank you, Commissioners. I'm very excited to bring before you this morning our second grant from the Multifamily Rental Housing Fund program that we moved forward in 2022. This grant is for $80,000 to develop 4 units in the city of Tillamook. And this is a unique project because these are units that are going directly above a commercial building, which is exactly the kind of infill development that allows us to solve our housing crisis without expanding further outward. And so one of the things I wanted to present to you also today was that this particular applicant did a phenomenal job looking for resources around the state, around the country, and also locally, leveraging relationships and opportunities as they were available. So this is really an application before us that demonstrates exactly the kind of developer that's going to help us solve these problems in Tillamook County. Your agreement before you looks very similar to the one that we looked at a few weeks ago. The Exhibit A includes award terms and conditions. Exhibit B is the award history and progress reporting to how we got to where we are today, including the recipient's application and criteria scoring from both the Finance Committee and from the Housing Commission. The recipient submitted their pro forma so that the Finance Committee and Housing Commission could show that they demonstrated a need and a gap at the affordability commitment that they had made through this grant program. And there's also attached an annual progress report form, which all applicants are required to submit to me once per year, and I'll verify that they kept their rents below the limits that they said that they would keep them below. I wanted to just go ahead and mention very quickly that this project is moving forward. I was there just last week, and it's really amazing to just see all the progress that is moving forward. And Commissioner Scar, I know you were there too. I wonder if you would like to speak a little bit on this really exciting project before us today.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, and I know that Commissioner Yamamoto was able to visit. I'm not sure if Commissioner Belton.
Not yet.
Not yet, but she will, I believe. So This is a really exciting project. We, as TJ stated, this is how we will solve our housing crisis. It's going to be people who are willing to jump in and build housing and do that in lots of different spaces, lots of different ways. And Lisa really has taken this bull by the horn, so to speak. She is not a housing developer. This is not something that she's done before, and she's run into her share of problems, of course, as you would, renovating an older building, and she's just taken it in stride and continued to march forward. So really appreciate the work that she's doing and completely agree that it is how we will solve this crisis as members of our community stepping forward and doing creative things. So anything else you wanted to add, TJ?
No, except for the fact, for the record, this is a 20-year commitment from this project. So we will see rents that are between 80 and 120% area median income for the next 20 years on this project.
Wonderful, yeah, and that's phenomenal. That's really what we're hoping for when we're doing our grants, is that we will have that commitment to keep these as workforce housing. And that 80 to 120 really is targeting the teachers, the nurses, you know, those folks, the young professionals who are coming to our community who are just, they're making a decent wage, but in our particular environment, a decent wage is not enough. So these units of housing are vital. So commissioners, questions or comments?
I'm happy that we're supporting this project. I think it's great. I was able to visit the facility before the project started, when it was just, the upstairs was, I don't think that Lisa and Dennis owned it then. And when it was just vacant. And you could see the potential. It's a really cool space. And so I'm delighted that the Grinders invested in this. It's a long-term investment in housing and in downtown renovation, which is really important to me and to all of us. And I was thinking about, I used to live in McMinnville, and McMinnville is a good long period of time ahead of us in terms of downtown renovation, maybe 20 plus years. And they have similar aged downtown architecture, and they built housing upstairs and restaurants and shops, et cetera, downstairs. So it's really encouraging to me to see us beginning that, see what's happening in our downtown, and see I can picture in my mind how that could look 10 years from now, how wonderful it could be. I think we're on the path for that, so I'm very encouraged.
Yes, thank you. I was fortunate to be able to tour this just yesterday. It was cold out there, but this is really a historic building. It was built, according to Lisa, it was built in 1909, even before this courthouse was built. And it's truly an amazing building. It is. They're working right along. Floor apartments on the second floor, on the upper floor. And these are not tiny little apartments. They're actually a decent sized apartment. This is in Tillamook County. I think we all agree that our biggest issue in Tillamook County is housing. The report we were talking about, I believe it was last week, where a third of the people that work in Tillamook County actually live outside of Tillamook County. And it's not because that's where they want to live necessarily, but that's where they have to live because they cannot find housing in Tillamook County. So this is outside the box thinking. 4 apartments may not seem like a lot, but right in downtown Portland where it is, it's just a perfect spot. It's a great development, it is. And this comes from part of the almost $750,000 that the commissioners approved a month or so ago. And we're actually working on bringing housing to Tillamook County, which again, I think is perfect. So I congratulate the Grinders very much, although I did notice that the building, I think that they need to change the name of the building. The building is currently called the Jones Knudsen Apartments, and I think they need to change that. If they want to add their name, Jones Knudsen Apartments.
I think they should give recognition for what they're doing up there.
I absolutely do. I mean, it's a great project, and congratulations to them. They may even be ready for occupancy later this spring, which is perfect. It really is. So I am in full support. Great project. a great use of the monies that we provided. It is.
Absolutely, and I would remind people that these funds, actually, there's two sources that went into that pool of funding that were awarded by the Housing Commission. There was $400,000 of county ARPA funds that went into that fund to seed it, and then we have a wonderful partnership with our short-term rental operators, where they pay a short-term rental operator license fee, which is on top of their short-term rental operator license that they purchase. They pay an additional fee, and that fee is spent, 75% goes to housing and 25% to public safety. And so this is really a wonderful community partnership that is focused on getting the workforce housing that we need. So great opportunity, excited to have this contract in front, or this grant agreement in front of us, and excited to see that housing be finished and occupied.
Perfect.
Okay.
And TJ, thank you for everything you're doing here. You're doing a great job.
Thank you, Commissioners.
All right, ready for a motion?
Madam Chair, in consideration of a multifamily rental housing grant agreement number 2023-MHF-2 with Lisa Griner for the Griner Tillamook project, I would move approval.
And I second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, and we'll call for the vote. All of those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks,
All right,
TJ.
thank you so much, TJ.
Thank you.
Commissioner Stark, he did have a second item, number 14.
Oh, he did?
that I don't think we caught as part of his
Whoops.
package to move out.
Okay, so TJ, don't go anywhere. I apologize for that. I did not catch that he also had number 14. So we have a second item with TJ this morning, number 14, that we will move up as well. Discussion and consideration of a personal services agreement with X4 Health for coordinated homeless response. TJ.
Thank you, Commissioner Scar. Well, you are very well aware of this particular contract, and for the benefit of other commissioners and the public, I'll give a preamble and then let you give some more details, because I know we're both very excited about this project moving forward. So X4 is a consultant that we worked with several months ago on a program called Rocket, and they helped us identify some of our early assets and asset mapping with regard to what we can do within our county to begin to address homelessness. As you are well aware, we received $1 million from House Bill 4123 from the state to operationalize a coordinated homeless response pilot program. That's a mouthful I'm getting very good at now. All 7 cities are on board with the county, and this particular consultant is going to help us operationalize the strategic plan that is required to be submitted by June under this legislation. They'll be listening into our meetings, collecting data and resources that I provide to them, both from our Intergovernmental Advisory Board, also from our Community Advisory Board. So there's information coming up from the grassroots level directly to our consultant, who is going to help us put together that comprehensive strategic plan that makes sure that we have a really strong program moving forward. Commissioner Scar, would you like to add anything to that?
No, I think you did a great job, TJ. I think that X4 is an excellent group. We were fortunate that we were able to work with them previously under a grant agreement through the Association of Oregon Counties. So at that time, they were free to us, which is the best way to evaluate a service, right? Is to give it a try and see what you think.
Nice price.
It is, and we were able to do that again under a grant through the Association of Oregon Counties, and we were very satisfied. They did an amazing job during the pandemic of pulling together stakeholder groups. We had used an online process to hear from everyone, to, as TJ pointed out, to do the asset mapping, to look at the gaps in our system, and then to identify the greatest needs for our homeless system, which included a coordinated system, was one of the greatest needs that we had, as well as low barrier shelter. And we're very excited because we have this homeless money, the House Bill 4123, to help us get that coordinated system in place. And then CARE has received money through the Behavioral Health Resource Network grant to work on putting the low barrier shelter in place. So the work that was done by X4 leading us to this place has given us the documentation, the proof, the planning that has allowed us to receive these additional funds. You know, whenever you go out for a grant, they want to know why you think that what you're asking for is the right thing. And the work from X4 lined us up just beautifully for both the House Bill 4123 money and the Behavioral Health Resource Network money for CARE. So this is, you know, the first steps we took with them really laid the groundwork, and we're super excited to have them join us and pull together a very strong strategic plan for submittal to the state as is required under House Bill 4123. So, TJ, did I miss anything?
No, other than the fact that I very much appreciate your leadership and partnership on this program. Your leadership is really the reason this program is moving forward. So thank you for the opportunity to participate in this.
Thank you. And this, of course, everyone knows is very close to my heart, you know, coming from having done this work at CARE and having seen the need for government and nonprofits to work together to have an impact on the issue of those who are experiencing homelessness. This is super exciting to see it coming together this way and funded in this way so that we can really make a difference. Commissioners, questions or comments of TJ?
Well, excuse me, I think most of us in Tillamook County are aware that the problem of homelessness is acute and growing. And so I'm thrilled that we received the grant. We were able to do the work to try to design a solution. And I think this is particularly exciting to do strategic planning with the cities and the county working together, because it's unusual. To my knowledge, it's unusual because cities are autonomous governments, and so if the county came up with a solution that was different than what the cities were doing, it wouldn't be very effective. We really need to have a solution that we do together in partnership with the cities, and so I'm glad that we can use X4 to do that work for us, to strategically plan with the cities and the county for a solution that will work for all of us.
Perfect, thank you.
And I concur. When we think of homelessness in Oregon, we don't think of rural counties like our own. Metropolitan areas, and yes, they have a larger problem, but perhaps on a per capita basis, I think small rural counties like Tillamook County, we have a moderate climate, a little wet. We've got transportation to and from the metro areas, and we do have a homeless population here. It is rather hidden, no doubt about that, but we do have a homeless problem. This is a great example of how Tillamook County, under your leadership, Commissioner Stark, really is moving this forward, and I appreciate it very much. This is going to do nothing but assist us in making sure that our homeless population is taken care of as best as possible. We do have issues of drug abuse and things of that nature, but all of these steps that we're now taking is very important, not something that we can just ignore. So again, I appreciate your work on this. And TJ.
Yeah, thank you. This is a good opportunity. We have homeless camps that we don't see. I think one of the things about Tillamook County that is different than the major metropolitan areas is that folks have plenty of places to be where they are not visible. So while we see a small number of folks on the streets in our downtown area, which is new over the last few years, that's just the tip of the iceberg. The majority of our folks who are experiencing homelessness have found places and spaces in our sloughs, in our forests, under our bridges, in places where they are not in plain sight. And so people who are driving through or walking through Tillamook would say, well, yeah, there's a few. But when you really get down to the numbers, there are many. I was reviewing our numbers over the last few years as we were looking at getting into the emergency declaration that the governor has. And we have typically served at CARE in any given year somewhere between 1,200 and 1,500 families, and that can be a household, which can be either an individual or a family, and that's been up to as much as 2,300 to 2,500 people each year who've received services relating to their experience of homelessness. So it is a large number in Tillamook County, and it's invisible for the most cases. You know, our deputies in the forest know where they are. Our sheriff, with the work that they're doing in the task force, knows where they are and reaching out to try to help and to clean up and to do the things we need to do. This grant money and this coordinated system will really help with that. So, okay, I think we are ready for a motion. Oh,
Madam Chair, just a point of process. So last week you approved the notice of intent to award, which requires a 7-day protest period. In the interest of trying to expedite this project, on occasion when urgency is warranted, as in this case, the board can approve a motion for the contract pending the end of the protest period, which is at the end of the day. So you wouldn't sign following this meeting, it would be tomorrow morning.
Perfect, thank you. And I would just address quickly the urgency. We are required to submit the strategic plan to the state of Oregon by the end of June. And so we have an urgency to complete this plan. The timelines in House Bill 4123 were relatively short. The intent of that legislative action was to get the money out and to get it working quickly. And as a result, they really have pushed us to act quickly. So we are allowing the full 7-day protest period. As Rachel indicated, we are just approving it today because if we don't, then we would lose another week. So
So I would approve with the condition that it not take effect until the end of the protest period, which is the end of the day today. Perfect. Okay, ready for a motion?
I am.
Madam Chair, in consideration of a personal services agreement with X4 Health for coordinated homeless response, I would move approval pending this approval. Wait until the end of business day when the protest period is over.
I second. All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right, thank you, TJ. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
We
Commissioners.
have Zach online now.
Yes. Okay, and I see that Zach has joined us from the Lower Nehalem Watershed Council. So we will return to presentation, item number 5, the Lower Nehalem Watershed Council Annual Report Presentation. Welcome, Zach.
Hey, thank you for having me. I am pulling up the screen share right now, but while I do that, you know, I'm Zach with the Lower Nehalem Watershed Council, Zach Ballin. I'm the coordinator over here, and for some reason the screen share is not coming up.
It does take just a bit sometimes.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
up and we see your desktop for the settings. That's what we are seeing. So do you have another window you might want to select?
Yeah, that might be it. I'm a little bit less familiar with Teams, to be honest.
I know, there's always a new platform.
You know, there are just so many of them at this stage.
That is true.
Well, maybe if I just move this over here and hit desktop, and then, how about now? Does that look like a
There you go.
presentation?
You did it.
Yes, it does. It's not in presentation
No,
mode,
it
but
is
we
now.
do see your slides.
No, it is.
Oh, it
now.
is. Oh, it is on Dave's. It will be momentarily. There's a delay in the room,
Yes.
but Commissioner Yamamoto's online and does see it correctly.
Great. Well, in that case, I now have all my visual cues to get into the presentation here. So again, my name is Zach Mallon. I'm the coordinator for Lower Nehalem Watershed Council. And every other year, historically, the council has presented to the commissioners about the work we've done. And as an option that I want to throw out to you this year, we received a request from the Clatsop County Commissioners to start doing these presentations for them annually. And so I'm going to offer that as an option to all of you as well. Just because you can keep up to date on the kind of work we're doing. That said, the Watershed Council, in case anyone's not familiar with it, who's watching,
Zach?
our mission is to protect, preserve, and enhance the Nehalem watershed through leadership, cooperation, and education. And we do that through a wide variety of projects. And these are everything from monitoring or new research that we do, engineering designs, the actual restoration project implementations themselves, a variety of regional collaborations that we're involved in, as well as educational programming like our Explore Nature programming and our speaker series. Now, I like to always start these off by just kind of running through, here's the money that the council has spent and brought in the last year. So, in brief, Our income was predominantly from the state. A large part of that is because OWEB is a major funder. And specifically, the OWEB funding comes through the Oregon State Lottery. But state income tends to be our biggest number. And then we also receive a fair amount from other places like other agencies this year, where that kind of that 10%, where we were getting money from Wild Salmon Center, Nature Conservancy, and other conservation organizations. Some years we have higher federal income, so while in 22 we had very little, I've been awarded a couple grants that are going to show up in 23. So anyway, we brought in nearly $200,000, and our expenses were about $225,000. There's a reason for the difference there, and that's because we're still waiting on some reimbursements for some costs to come in on some work that we did. So anyway, the other big thing to point out is that 65% of our expenses this year were specifically dedicated to active restoration work, be that design work or actually putting work in on the ground. And I like to try and keep that percentage as high as possible, because, that's what we're here for, is to do that work. I'm just going to feature a couple projects that we've been working on, because I think that's a fun way to kind of show what we're up to. And one of them is this Bandy Slough tide gate removal. And this is a property where it's rural residential, and the 3 landowners who own collectively the wetland there, the only thing they use that slough and wetland for is bird watching and wildlife viewing. And so the tide gate that's on this little property, it's only a couple acres in size. That tide gate's not doing anything besides blocking fish passage to potential rearing habitat for juvenile salmonids. And so we're going to go in and find a way to remove it while also maintaining the access easement for PacifiCorp to maintain the power line that runs through the property. So that's a pretty exciting little project. We're also continuing to work with the Nehalem River Ranch on a 1.5 miles of riparian planting along the Nehalem River. It's kind of an exciting one because we're combining the use of slash grazing to control some of the Japanese knotweed on site with some of the hand controls that we would otherwise use. And also there's a silvopasture planting happening in their upstream field, where they combine planting of mostly hardwood trees like maples and cottonwood and alder to provide a different variety of grasses for their cows to graze on. So that's pretty exciting and continues to move along. Here's a picture of some of the spruce trees along the Main Stem River from back in December. You can see that it's a pretty dense planting that we're putting in, and again, that planting density is there to try and keep the knotweed down and reduce the density of the knotweed when those trees are finally adult size in 25 to 30 years. Another project we worked on this year is our Coal Creek riparian and midstream enhancement. It's about a 1/2 mile of riparian planting, and also we replaced a washed out residential culvert with a bridge. And because it's always more fun to have a video involved, here's a quick video from some high water we had back in December. And when you think about the fact that that's a 14-foot span there, and before we replaced that culvert, that 14-foot bank full width that you see all that water in right now was going through a 3-foot pipe. And so you can imagine how easily that how easily that got blocked up and then flooded and washed out. And again, there's a whole bunch of planting involved in this project as well, about a 1/2 mile. So continuing to work on our riparian plantings. Something I'm really excited about, and I'm going to try and get through all the excitement in the next 2 minutes here are some of our collaborations that we've been working on around the region. And one of the big ones is this Nehalem Basin Partnership that between the Upper Nehalem Watershed Council and myself, we brought together last week actually nearly 30 representatives from private timber and from local interested citizens and agencies ranging from ODFW and the Department of Forestry and Parks and Recreation, a whole bunch more. Anyway, we had a room full of 30 people all getting together to initiate this process by which we're going to strategize the sequencing and the implementation of habitat restoration projects throughout the basin. And it'll be a really great collaborative opportunity for people to reach across borders and reach across jurisdictions, reach across property lines, to really share the burden and the work of implementing some of these restoration projects. And the focus of this particular partnership at the moment is going to be on implementing the strategic action plan for Coho that we released in January of this year as well. So this is a big one. We're going to be really ramping up the pace of restoration activities in the next several years. So this is a plan that extends into 2045 and has a large volume of work included in it, but it's all been prioritized by using research that we actively did ourselves or existing research to identify the best locations to focus on for doing our work, be it highest priority fish passage barriers like culverts and such, large wood and stream, large wood recruitment through natural processes so we don't have to keep going in ourselves, etc. The Lower Nehalem Watershed Council has also been in charge, or leading the charge, on a regional watershed councils collaboration. And what we're doing is we're going through a systematic process to identify strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and we're doing a SWOT analysis in an effort to identify where we can collaborate to ease the administrative burdens on each organization so that we can be more effective while also providing the same, if not better, services to our communities. And we're going to put together an MOU to pursue whichever of these options that we come up with into actual programming. And right now it looks like it's going to be featuring largely our outreach and educational programming is going to be what we're going to be focusing on first. And it's a neat collaboration because it's bringing together groups all the way from down the Stuckanesco and Sand Lake all the way up into the North Coast Watershed Association and involving the Upper Nehalem as well. So it's a really neat regional effort that we're doing here. We have a lot of upcoming projects, including several fish passage projects that we're applying for funding for right now. A fair amount of in-stream enhancement, being large wood projects, putting wood back into streams, and some additional riparian tidal wetland enhancement as well. I always need to mention all of our funders and partners, and I can never quite mention them all, but here's a sampling of some of the people that we've partnered with or been funded by in the last year. And so finally, any questions?
Thank you so much, Zach. Appreciate that presentation. Commissioners, are there questions and comments?
I'm grateful for the presentation also, Zach. Thank you. It's really interesting. I was interested in what you said about the Nehalem River Ranch Riparian Revegetation Project, and I'd never heard of flash grazing before or how it is applied to Japanese knotweed, so I wonder if you could say a few words about that.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, so flash grazing is essentially, you do a little bit of trying to encourage your livestock to eat a particular weed, and Jared, the owner of the Nehalem River Ranch, has actually been grazing his cattle and other animals on knotweed for a while. And the idea is that between doing some protection around your plantings and moving them in and out of the area relatively quickly, you can get them to focus on grazing specifically your target species that you're trying to get rid of. And they'll largely leave other vegetation alone if you get them in and out and they have a preference for your target weed. And so, to be honest, it's something that Jared brought to me. It's a relatively new approach to managing Japanese knotweed, and we have some funding from OWEB and some attention from other locations as well to do some monitoring of how well we're able to get our trees established and whether or not we end up with any reduction of density in that Japanese knotweed after, I mean, we're going to be doing this and looking at it for at least 10 years, if not longer, because also we're not going to know how well those trees are shading out and out competing knotweed until they're mature, and that's easily 15 to 20 years away.
That is fascinating, thank you. I live on the north fork of the Nehalem, and I'm horrified by the Japanese knotweed, which is, it's measurably grows, spreads multiple feet every year. It's crazy. And so if cows prefer it, that is very good news. I'm glad to hear that we're working on innovative solutions because it's really taking over the riverbank. Yeah, it's terrible. And also, I think your Nehalem Basin partnership is very interesting and makes sense. I think that's exciting. You described it as a very exciting project, and I totally agree. That is exciting.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I was glad to hear about the watersheds collaboration because that makes sense. It makes sense. It's logical that there would be things, shared services that would benefit all of the local watersheds. So thanks for your presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much. And if you'd like, feel free to reach out to me about knotweed. It is a perennial problem in the Nehalem, and it's a problem that extends upstream for a long distance. And so a comprehensive solution, I think, could be possible, but it would take a lot of will and buy-in regionally. So
Thank you.
It's a conversation I'm happy to have.
Thank you. I will. I appreciate that.
So thank you, Zach, for being here. Can you go back to your first slide, please? Your very first introductory slide.
With the cute dog.
Yeah, let me.
The other one with the cute dog. We have two of the cute dogs.
3.
Let's play from start. There we go. This one?
Yeah, I mean, I just have to say that that's a very handsome dog you have there, Zach. It really is. I wanted to mention that at the very beginning, but I just love that picture of your dog. I do.
Thank you so much.
Zach, I appreciate you being here very much. You're doing great work. I'm glad you mentioned on your funders and partners page that at the end you said, well, we can't mention them all. Because I do see two notable omissions from your list, and I'm hoping you do work with them very closely. First would be our very own Public Works Department, and the second
definitely
would be Soil and Water Conservation District. And when it comes to Soil and Water Conservation District, I know they do a lot of work on Japanese knotweed. And I know you've got a huge problem up on the Nehalem, and I know they work a lot on the upper Nehalem, so I hope you're working with them on the knotweed problem also.
So, I think in short the answer is yes, I definitely do work with both of those groups as well, and that would be an omission. We haven't had any shared projects with the SWCD for a little bit, but they also were present for the Nehalem Basin Partnership meeting. They had a representative present, and so I'm looking forward to us coordinating more on a lot more projects moving forward.
And that would be great, because in South County, I know our Public Works Department, Raymond Rowe, Soil and Water Conservation, Salmon Superhighway, Stucca, Nesco, and Salmon Lake Watershed Council, They all work very closely together. We get a lot of work done, you know, especially when you're having to replace culverts that are failing. And oftentimes, this is what Chris Lady always tells us, oftentimes they can't just replace a culvert with a culvert, they have to replace it with a bridge, which gets very expensive. And we've had great collaboration in South County, and they're able to do a lot of great work. And I know you're doing a lot of great work. One of the issues here, of course, is Coho, which you mentioned the Coho. And I'm very glad when I hear ODFW come along and say, well, this spring on the Nehalem, we're going to allow a take of wild Coho. Same thing happens on the Nestucca River to the south. And that to me is incredible, that an endangered species like the wild Coho can be allowed to be kept by local fishermen. It's a great concept. I ask NOAA Fisheries how ODFW can do that. It's an endangered species. And they tell me, well, it's because we tell them that they can. We're doing some great work in Tillamook County, both on the Nehalem and the Nestucca, for ODFW to allow a take of an endangered species like that from time to time. Again, just points out the great work that we're doing in Tillamook County. So again, thank you for what you do.
Thank you so much. And I want to say that specifically in regards to the Public Works Department, we coordinated on priorities for fish passage based on our 2016 culvert assessment with the Public Works Department in Tillamook County to put together a really good list that they, I believe, I haven't checked in the last couple of weeks, I think the due date was yesterday, but I believe they included all of those projects in a major grant to the feds for correcting a lot of those culverts, because that infrastructure bill is bringing a lot of money for culverts right now. And so they used information from our prioritization in support of that application. So we definitely have been coordinated on that kind of stuff.
Perfect. Thank you, Zach.
Yeah. Thank you.
Wonderful. And Zach, this is a great presentation. I love all the work that the watershed councils are doing. I actually was keying on the same three things that Commissioner Bell brought up. I had an opportunity to visit the Nehalem River Ranch. We had a Tillamook Estuaries partnership dinner that we had purchased that Jared and his folks put on there at the ranch, which was amazing. But we did do a walk and talk, and he shared with us, you know, this project and specifics of this project. And it is really exciting. I love the Japanese knotweed piece of it. It was interesting. They actually had prepared some Japanese knotweed for us to eat. It is apparently extremely nutritious, which is the other thing about the flash grazing and why it is good for the cows, is it's actually very, very nutritious for them. So I know that Japanese knotweed is a huge nightmare. My husband is an avid fisherman and just really laments how it spreads on the banks of all of our rivers, and you know, it's not good in that way. But there's some really amazing things about Japanese knotweed that I didn't know until I visited this. The other piece that was interesting in talking to Jared about this project is that the planting of the hardwoods is also a climate resiliency piece. And he talked about, you know, as we have warming summers and pieces like that for his cattle, having that shade will become a very important aspect of what these trees will do. So it will allow different grasses to grow. As you pointed out, it will provide shade for the cows. It will also provide a windbreak. As we have those east wind events that just whip down that valley, it will provide a windbreak for the livestock as well. So just really interesting to look at the 360-degree view of what's happening at Nehalem River Ranch and how they're trying to look at the environment in all of its functions and improve that. So I think it's just a really cool project. If anyone hasn't had a chance, and you know, I don't know how often they do tours, but really, really great project. The other one you mentioned, the basin project, and for the Nehalem Basin and getting everyone together. I love that. I've just started doing some background work on kind of water in Tillamook County and looking at where it comes from, where it goes, who uses it, how this happens. And one of the things that is really impactful is that our basins do not stop at our county lines. So when we talk about the water in Tillamook County, and we talk particularly about the Nehalem Basin, you know, your map clearly shows we only have about half of it here. And the other half of it, is in another county. So when we talk about water projects and how we deal with water, we can't stop at county line. Mother Nature did not set us up with county boundaries to have our project. So I love that you are doing that with an eye to the entire basin. I think that's really fabulous. I also really appreciate the watersheds collaboration. I think that it makes a lot of sense. I've been doing work with the Tillamook Bay Watershed Council as they work to retool that council, and they will be coming before the commissioners to ask for re-recognition in the coming months. And so I do hope that as they are able to get their re-recognition and ideally some funding and staff, that there will be a space for them to join this collaboration that is underway. So I think, nonprofits are my background. They're an amazing structure to get things done, and they are also a challenging structure in areas where they're small and to try to have capacity. So I think just working together makes so much sense.
Thank you. Yeah, on that last piece, there is definitely a seat at the table for Tillamook Bay Watershed Council when they're ready for it.
Perfect.
And one of the really big reasons for that partnership, one of the things that we were really excited about trying to do was finding ways to make these positions that, like the one I have, more sustainable for Watershed Council coordinators and directors, because there tends to be a relatively high turnover rate in these positions, which doesn't serve anybody in the community if these positions turn over frequently. And so by supporting each other, hopefully we'll be able to keep more of us around for much longer and therefore be a lot more effective. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you,
Good
Zach.
strategy.
Yeah, I completely agree. Great strategy. Are there any more questions for Zach?
Thank you.
Okay, Zach, just thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your presentation. We look forward to these, and we will look forward to hearing from you again in the future to just keep up on what's happening.
Definitely, yeah. Let me know if you would like this to be an annual thing. I can make that happen. And thank you so much for having me, commissioners. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you so much, Zach. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay, we will return to our legislative administrative agenda, and we will now take item number 6. Discussion and consideration of a letter of support for the Port of Garibaldi Commercial Wharf Seawall Reconstruction and Seismic Retrofit Project. We have Michael Sangden, General Manager of the Port of Garibaldi, with us this morning. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for your time. Yeah, we are going to be submitting a couple of grants. Both we're going to be doing the RAISE grant through Department of Transportation, and then we're also doing the Port Infrastructure Development grant through MARAD. What we're looking to do, as most of you know, in 2015, we started the commercial wharf project and replaced about 50% of the commercial wharf. The original commercial wharf was built in 1941, and it has been failing. We've been waiting for the leases to come due on the old Smith building and next door where Pacific Seafood has and the cannery were. Both those buildings will be getting removed here sometime in the future, and we are going to continue that commercial wharf all the way to the end. Also, this project's going to address the seawall that runs along Mooring Basin Road on the west side of the boat basin, which has been failing and getting underpinned for quite a few years, and it's affecting Mooring Basin Road itself. So, in order, this grant or project is going to address intermodal connectivity, ADA accessibility, seismic retrofitting, economic development. With the addition of the South Jetty project finally moving forward at a moderate pace, but now that it's funded, right now we have brought in over the last couple of years, Bornstein's Seafood has now opened up here in the Port of Garibaldi. In addition to Pacific Seafood, Fish People, we just signed leases with Pacific Dream Seafood. We have Tillamook Bay Seafood, we have the Oregon Clam Company, and the Spot all operating. And with the seawall or the jetties getting repaired, we have more interest and more desire to be coming into the port. And this will allow us to offload more and bring in even more businesses. We have 2 or 3 right now that are kind of frothing at the bit to get on those properties, even though it's going to be a few years down the road. So we're pretty excited about, the moving forward of everything right now. The Jetty project has really kind of opened the floodgates of some of the businesses that have stayed away just due to the inaccessibility of the bar. So that's where our request is right now, and we'll be applying. One's due in February and one's due in March. That's where we're at. So we appreciate your consideration of the letter of support.
Thank you, Mike. Questions or comments, commissioners?
Excellent. I am totally supportive of these projects. We had the pleasure of meeting with you and touring the port recently, and you walked us around and showed us the cracks in the wall and the problems you just described. So I think this is terrific. I'm completely supportive.
Yeah, Mike, it seems like you keep asking for money. $63 million wasn't enough. But I certainly understand. I'm glad that project is moving forward, albeit maybe a little slowly. You've got a great facility out there, Mike. You really do. And it's one of the gems of the Oregon coast, and with the improvements that you see happening there, it's going to take a lot of money, but that's what these grants are for. I'm absolutely in full support of your vision for the Port of Garibaldi. It's a great vision. Matter of fact, we're going to be doing another Tillamook Working Lands and Waters tour coming up in May, hopefully in May, for the next county college class. And I would love to, we need to sit down and talk. I think having them come out to the port, showing them around the port exactly what you do, I think that would be a great stop, one that we haven't done before. So
Yes, sir. Let's do it.
Again, I appreciate everything you're doing there. Your vision for the port is terrific, and all we need is money. We've been successful in the past, and I think we can continue to be successful here.
Yes, sir.
Perfect, thank you, and I am completely in agreement with the other commissioners. You guys have just a really critical piece of our infrastructure for Tillamook County and our economy, and it really needs to be maintained and repaired. So I am super hopeful that you will be successful in these grants. As we talked about, it only takes money, and the county unfortunately is not made of money. So we are not able to give you $65 million or even $2 or $3 million as you continue to seek funding for these projects. But we're pleased to have been able to fund the bathroom repairs and renovations that are happening, as well as the fish cleaning station out there. So I think it's a great partnership with the federal, and obviously you're looking at state funding and local funding where we can. So we are happy to provide a letter of support and really attest to the importance of the port to Tillamook County. So
Thank you, Commissioners.
absolutely, and we are ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, in consideration of a letter of support for the Port of Garibaldi Commercial Wharf Seawall Reconstruction and Seismic Retrofit Project, I would move approval.
And I second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. All of those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Mike.
Mike.
Thank you again.
Okay, moving on to item number 7, discussion and consideration of a 5th amendment to the Oregon Health Authority 2022 Intergovernmental Agreement number 173148 for the financing of community mental health, addiction treatment, recovery and prevention, and gambling services. And we have Frank County Williams, the Executive Director of Tillamook Family Counseling, with us.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning,
Frank County Williams, Director, Tillamook Family Counseling Center. What you have before you is the 5th Amendment of the OHA Intergovernmental Agreement. You will see on the cover that it does indicate 2022, and what this really is about. It's the same number of the agreement, 173148. The bulk of the language in the agreement is from the 2022 year. What we're going to be working under is that there's been an agreement to continue with that language for the first 6 months of this coming year, because there is some I think I'm going to describe it as there are some operational disagreements between the behavioral health agencies and OHA that we're working out. And one of the issues is that we've decided to move forward and not let services to the community stop that while we continue to work out some operational challenges and let the dollars flow. Go to our counties and let them review and approve operational expenses for the first 6 months. As you'll see a little later in the agreement, it says that this agreement is through until June of 2023, and that is certainly what we all discussed at the AOC meeting in November, and to move ahead, and that we can continue to talk while folks get served. It's not as challenging as a spending ceiling that the government is having to deal with at the moment, but it does allow for some continued conversation. And I think the most important thing is that what I'm bringing to you is this Fifth Amendment. What you see here is payments through the financial assistance agreements going through to June. You'll see a list of services that these funds will cover, and also you'll also see in here the list of the various fund sources of the amount that comes to Sonoma County, whether it's mental health block grants or it's funds that come from the federal government, or it's just general fund allocation. It lists those, and in addition, it lists the services that these dollars are attached to for Sonoma County. So when it's, in the midst of the additional detail, what it does for this period of 6 months is it really winds up being an amount that would come to Sonoma County Counseling Center for, it's about $522,000. And again, it is for 6 months, and what I would be doing is, in my optimism that we'll be able to address our operational challenges, and with perhaps a bit of a boost from a new governor and a new administration, that in fact I'd be coming back to you to talk about July through December. So that is my overview. If you want to get more into the weeds, that's fine. I'm not so sure if we need to do that, but that is not for me to decide. But what I do want to do is to present this agreement for you, and I would ask that you approve.
Thank you, Frank, and I'll just speak quickly. I've had the opportunity to attend the Local Government Advisory Council, which is a partnership between the Association of Oregon Counties and the leadership at Oregon Health Authority and DHS. And this was discussed, I believe it was in November of the Local Government Advisory Council with the then sitting directors of OHA, and talking about how do we best move forward with the changes that really need to happen to update this agreement, because there are significant changes that really need to happen to the agreement. That at that time in November, of course, they were facing the change of a governor and the change of the director at OHA, both of which have now happened. So there is some outside structure that I think needed to stop moving in order for this agreement and the changes that are needed to it to move forward. And the best idea at the time was, let's go with what we already have, that we already agreed to, in order to keep services moving in the community, as Frank suggested. And I think that's the key and important piece, is that, there are so many services that are provided under this agreement for those in our community that have to happen. So I'm in full support of approving this, and will continue to attend those meetings and just kind of keep my finger on the pulse of what is happening and what changes may be coming to the agreement in its new form, which we will hope will be ready for a June signing. So. Commissioners, questions for Frank or myself?
Well, Frank, I do not need to get into the weeds with this, but I do appreciate the approach that you mentioned to continue to provide services while you are having the conversation, because the services you're providing are essential. And while I agree and understand that there may need to be changes to the contract, that we can't, the idea of halting services in the meantime is abhorrent. So thank you for your work.
And I would agree
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you, Frank. No, I agree with the other two commissioners. It's kind of refreshing, actually, at this point, that cooler, calmer heads prevailed, and realizing that these services are essential for counties, not just to cut it off because there is an agreement and you're still working on that agreement. It's refreshing, and you don't see this happen very much in government. You don't.
You do not. There's currently a conversation going on between the counties and ODOT, in which ODOT has simply said, we won't pay you until we come to an agreement, as opposed to this space where OHA and the community mental health providers have agreed, so.
So again, I have lots of questions, but Frank, I'm not gonna get down in the weeds. I don't think we need to get there. I know county council and Rachel have probably looked at this just to make sure that we're all on board, but it's coming from a higher place in the state of Oregon. So I'm in full agreement here.
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to get into the weeds about it at another time, and would welcome an opportunity to talk about that a bit. I think that I think we can move forward with this, but I would be willing to take that time to talk about that with you. I think I appreciate your informed. I appreciate Commissioner Scar's informed perspective about it, and I think that is very supporting to a person like myself. So I thank you for your view on it. Thanks.
Thank you, Frank. We appreciate your work, and I think that as we look at the changes that will be coming to that contract, perhaps a board briefing will be a great time as that work is being chewed through to come and talk with commissioners about where the sticking points are and what may be needed in terms of advocacy to get this where it needs to go. So I appreciate your willingness to do that, and we'll kind of put a pin in that one out there for perhaps an informational meeting where we can spend some more time digging.
Okay, very good.
Excellent. Well, with that, I think we are ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, in consideration of a Fifth Amendment to Oregon Health Authority 2022 Intergovernmental Agreement number 173148 for the financing of community mental health, addiction treatment, recovery and prevention, and gambling services, I would move approval.
I second. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. All of those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you so much, Frank.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item number 8, discussion and consideration of modification number 1 to professional services agreement number 22/23-02 with the Smile Studio for federally qualified health centers, FQHC, Oregon Health Plan Medicaid and non-insured dental services. And we have Marlene Putman, Administrator of Health and Human Services, with us this morning. Good morning, Marlene.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
So this may sound familiar to you because you just saw this agreement recently. My apologies for taking people's time to create this amendment because we put the wrong amount for the reimbursement rate. Instead of 185, we put 165. His agreements in the past, several haven't said 185, so we are correcting it to indicate that. And that's the only modification for your consideration.
Thank you, Marlene. And I think we've had a fairly sizable conversation related to this grant in the last go around. But commissioners' questions or comments?
No, fully supportive.
Same here.
Okay, I think we are ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, in consideration of modification number 1 to professional services agreement number 22/23-012 with the Smile Studio for federally qualified health centers, FQHC, Oregon Health Plan, Medicaid, and non-insured dental services, I would move approval.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Marlene. And it looks like you have the next one as well, so don't go anywhere. Number 9, discussion and consideration of Oregon Health Authority Intergovernmental Grant Agreement number 178909 to increase access to high-quality, culturally responsive reproductive health services. Marlene Putman, Administrator, Health and Human Services.
Yes, this agreement is not an amendment to the Oregon Health Authority program element services that you often see. This is a new, relatively small grant to, as indicated in the description, improve access to reproductive health services. In this instance, we are proposing to use these funds for staff training and patient education and outreach, including such things as the basic information about reproductive health for some of our new staff who may not have received that background and history, training on trauma-informed care and how that impacts service delivery, addressing the LGBTQI+ population and related use of pronouns, ensuring that staff have the same base understanding and expectations of what information to gather and how to do so in an appropriate and sensitive way. And also talking more about how do you de-escalate situations where staff and patients may be experiencing some stress associated with the visit, either from past trauma or just the day they're coming in. Who knows what happens in our lives sometimes, and it makes life difficult and appointments stressful. So we plan to cover those types of items with this small grant, a relatively small, I think it's $10,000, and we're looking to have several different organizations come in to provide the training. So we're hoping to sign this agreement in order to offer those services. The funds must be expended by a fairly short time frame, as you can see, in just about 4 months. So our plan is to do a training in March.
Thank you, Marlene. Questions or comments, Commissioners?
I think that's great. I don't recall that we've ever talked about that before in this meeting, and maybe it's entirely new, and that's why. But I think that sounds great. I'm glad you can do it.
And I would concur. Small grant, over 30 pages, so that means we're cutting down some trees to make do all the paper. I appreciate that. It's for a great cause. It really is. I'm in full support.
Thank you. And I am in support as well. I think that, we want our health center to be welcoming. We want our staff to feel confident and comfortable in providing the services to our community. And as we look at our world and the challenges that everyone faces, there's a lot of trauma-informed work, a lot of research that's been done, and we now understand a lot more about what causes trauma, about how that impacts individuals going forward in their lives, and how challenging it can make it for folks who are seeking services in areas that are stressful to them. So I think for our staff to really be able to set an environment of welcoming, of understanding, of best practice is what we really want to see in our health centers. So Marlene, I appreciate your work on this. It is definitely a critical component of our services.
Thank you. I just wanted to correct one thing, because I don't know if it was slurred together. And I do not necessarily even know all the specifics. LGBTQIA2S+ is the range of category that we're talking about for staff education. So we have some experts who are coming in to share that. Just wanted to clarify in case I slurred some things together there.
Thank you, Marlene.
Thank you.
I think that there's a learning curve for all of us, and I know for myself as well, when we start talking about the genders and gender fluidity and the different terms that go with that, so I appreciate your clarification. Okay, I think we are ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, in consideration of an Oregon Health Authority intergovernmental grant agreement number 178909 to increase access to high-quality, culturally responsive reproductive health services, I would move approval.
I second. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. All of those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks, Marlene.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marlene. Okay, moving on to item number 10, discussion and consideration of a grant application to the U.S. Department of Transportation's programs Rebuilding America Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity, RAISE. Chris Lady, Director of Public Works.
Commissioners, if I may, I'd like to address item 11 and then item 10, if that's acceptable.
That is acceptable. Let me read item 11 so that we can stay on track here. Item 11 is discussion and consideration of a grant application to the National Culvert Removal, Replacement, and Restoration Grant Program, Culvert AOP Program. Chris Lady.
So, Commissioners, the Culvert AOP stands for Aquatic Organism Passage. It's not always about fish. What you're seeing in front of you is the blowout that we had on Sand Lake Road that we recently completed. So this is also a fish pipe. So going through this process on achieving, money to address some of these failing infrastructure, ODFW will review this and determine if what we did was an acceptable solution or if we need to mitigate or reconstruct this to meet standards. So the standards in this case, the AOP is targeted specifically to culverts that are tied to anadromous fish. These are fish that are seagoing. Certain credits apply towards coho because they're on the threatened and endangered list. So anything that's a coho stream is going to take priority over everything else. So we went through a lot of process trying to identify what is our best move going forward that is the most highest likelihood to achieve grant. So we did talk with Zach. We did identify there are a lot of places out there that fit that. Over time, they noticed the funding opportunity has morphed a little bit. And as so too did my mentality of thinking on how do we want to approach that. So what we landed on were 4 culverts that we would like to apply for, 2 of which are on Brickyard Road. One is Myrtle Creek, that it's on Kiltis River Road, and the other one is Flower Pot on Bay Ocean Road that accesses Cape Mears. One thing to note is Myrtle Creek is an access to a tour site, and Flower Pot is a direct access to a tour site, being the community of Cape Mears. One of the reasons why we chose that, or one of the reasons why I'm choosing that, is previously we received a grant from NOAA. So that NOAA CDS grant was awarded to us for a total of $2.5 million. When that grant was written, the agreement was written, myself and NOAA, we worked through some language to give us the most flexibility as possible. And by doing so, what that opened up some opportunities. NOAA grant money is currently tied to Myrtle Creek and Flower Pot. The Myrtle Creek is at 60% design, and Flower Pot's at 30% design, both scheduled for summer construction of 2024. By applying for US DOT grant money, and if we are successful, that allows me to move the NOAA money that wouldn't to other culverts that may not actually be competitive in the US DOT world. So basically, if we become successful, I can move the NOAA money to another culvert that wouldn't compete at US DOT. Negative to that is the US DOT AOP program. It requires a 20% match, which we do have that set aside for matching funds. So we do have the money for a 20% match should we be successful. The 20% match is local. That also includes OWEB money because that is not federal. So going through that process, one of the things working with Zach is that we identified Anderson Road is one that's got a culvert up above. We did see some minor blowout on that. We did some stabilization repair to that over, that was in December, possibly November of last year. One of the things Zach had given me the information for that, I've reached out and asked ODFW, the local fisheries biologists, to do fish counts, fish surveys, things to support a future grant for next year. So we're looking at today, and we're looking at, how do we set ourselves up for future grant? That grant is available once a year for the next 5 years, including this. So this year and the following years. This grant is due next Tuesday, February 6th. So seeking authority to apply for this grant.
Thank you, Chris. Questions, commissioners?
That's an exciting opportunity, so I'm fully supportive and I appreciate you for pursuing it.
And I would concur, Chris. I know why you do this, because we don't supply you with enough money. You've got a lot of projects that you're looking at, things that need to be done, continually out there looking for grant opportunities, knowing when they need to be applied for, making sure that you can get your grant opportunities in. That's all terrific. That's how Tillamook County is surviving right now, our Public Works Department in particular. Really is. And Chris, that picture you've got up there, Sand Lake Road, I take that twice a day when I'm coming to or from the courthouse. Your work on that, when it blew out, was very quick. I know you guys worked over the weekend to do that, and that was a very, very deep culvert replacement you had to do there. I'm amazed now. I never noticed it before, but now when I drive by, I look on both sides, and that really is a very deep culvert there. It is. So again, appreciate what you do, appreciate you getting that done over the weekend, so I didn't have to take the long way to work.
It was all for you, Commissioner.
Yeah, I know that, I know. But again, Chris, you're doing a great job there. Keep on top of all this stuff. We appreciate it very much. That's how we continue to get stuff done. Thank you.
Yeah, and I agree, Chris, it's a great opportunity. I think our challenge is that we do have limited funds available for our roads. It's not part of our general fund budget. It is the state highway funds. It is what comes from registering cars. It is what comes from licenses of cars. It is not something that we in the county, are able to fund out of general fund, even if we had general fund to do so. And so the grants become exceptionally important as a large part of your budget. So I appreciate the work that you do to chase those grants down, and then to do the additional hard work of finding the highest and best use for each dollar that you receive. And that's, I think, what you're talking about today is, well, if I can get this one, I can move these funds over to this one, which can't qualify for the grant I'm applying for today, but really needs to be fixed as well. And it's a very complex process to try to lay out all of the needs of our county roads department, all of the funding sources that you have and hope to get and to align, which project gets which dollar. So I appreciate that work. I know it's very complex and definitely in support of going after more grants.
And Chris, if I may, this is something that's not talked about enough, so whenever you're here talking about funding, I always want to bring it up. We need to understand that a lot of public works funding used to come from U.S. Forest Service and BLM Timber Harvest. A couple of generations ago, when U.S. Forest Service was cutting a lot of timber, you had 50 people on your staff. And because we had so much money coming in, you were repairing, and this is where the rub lies. You were repairing and maintaining roads that didn't even belong to the county. But we had the money, we had the facilities, we had the manpower, we had the equipment. We were doing that. Now, 50 years later, because U.S. Forest Service timber production has just plummeted to almost zero, you can no longer do that. The old timers around here all remember those days when you used to come and fix their roads. And they're mad because you don't do that anymore. But there's a reason for that. Again, you're not funded out of the general fund, and the money's dried up in federal timber harvest. So I just always like to make that explanation whenever we can to make sure the public understands that it's not because we're not funding you sufficiently. It's mainly because our federal timber harvest is going away. So just want to make that point.
Thank you, it is a good point, and I think the other thing is, TLT is a large part of our roads budget at this time, and I think that that's an amazing thing. I know that there's controversy over whether we should or should not have brought in the TLT in 2014, and whether that was the reason for our, landslide of visitors, but it has been a very important piece of our public works budget, and one that we couldn't do without. When we talk about $1 million for a bridge, that's critical funding. And when we talk about how much is it to pave a mile of road now, Chris, that's like $1 million, or probably double that with the new cost of asphalt, right? Yeah, so the costs of public works just keep going up and up by no fault of their own. And it is one of those crucial things that we can't just stop maintaining our roads. That is not an option. So last night, one of the opportunities I had was to testify for a House Bill 2101, which is what I referenced earlier about ODOT, basically deciding that they're just going to end a program that's been a crucial funding program for counties and cities for over 40 years. And it's called the Fund Exchange, and it's a really crucial program. Without it, that's 25% of our paving budget that we would lose. So we're fighting hard to try to maintain that program at the state level. So there's just a lot of pieces that go into funding our road system, and they're not something that we can just do without. So thank you, Chris, for all of your work. I appreciate it very much.
Sure.
I think we're ready for a motion.
Ready for a motion. Before I make the motion, I want to ask one question. Who came up with the name Flower Pot, for gosh sake?
Good question.
Sorry.
A flower child.
I digress, sorry.
You do.
So we're starting with number 11.
We are.
correct?
We're taking number 11 first.
Perfect. In consideration, Madam Chair, in consideration of a grant application to the National Culvert Removal, Replacement, and Restoration Grant Program, the Culvert AOP program, I would move approval.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. All of those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we will now circle back to item number 10, which I will move then. Discussion and consideration of a grant application to the U.S. Department of Transportation's programs Rebuilding America Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity, RAISE. Chris Laity.
So this program has been around for a while. It was formerly called Tiger. It was formerly called Built, and now it's been a rebranding. But with that rebranding, some of the criteria has modified, and it's actually turned to our favor. I did sit through a recent presentation. We've never been able to afford the match on these, so it's always been kind of in the back mind that, why don't we apply for it? Well, we can't because we don't have the money for it. So as we're going through the Culvert AOP process, one of the things that we were thinking about is the AOP process is the O'Hara Creek. O'Hara Creek is in Netarts Bay. It goes actually underneath the boat launch in Netarts. It is somewhat of a concern for us. It does carry coho. We ended up dropping that off the list, but as we were going through that process and developing the AOP, the culvert list, we identified Netarts is actually in an area in the census tract that's historically disadvantaged community. We get a benefit from the AOP and from RAISE because of that. And as we were going through that, we also noticed that Cape Mears, in particular Bay Ocean, is in an area of persistent poverty and historically disadvantaged community. And a lot of that has to do with the city of Tillamook, and we certainly heavily bring the west side of 101, really brings that down. In Cape Mears, if you don't live there, you don't have a salary. If you're a short-term rental, you're not contributing to the salary base. If you're a second homeowner, you don't contribute to it. So it's kind of an artificial number there. But going through that process is the AOP kind of brought us into the RAISE grant. Very last minute, this grant is due on February 28th. So what we would like to submit for is actually two different grants. So I'm really trying to squeeze one out. Two different RAISE grants. One would be for Netarts Bay Drive, which was essentially replace all the culverts along that, and also try to add a bike lane. So one of the things that's always tripped us up in the past is a project of regional significance, because we have the Oregon Coast Trail, the Three Cape Scenic Loop, the bike that really starts to tick all the boxes. Now it actually talks about one of the criteria in there to score the highest, facilitates tourism opportunities. So rural counties, rural areas never scored well in this because we never had the volume of traffic compared to everybody else. So this grant is now modified so that we get 50%. The rural counties or rural areas get 50% of the grant. So because we are historically disadvantaged, we don't pay a dime. So it's basically a free grant because we tick the box historically disadvantaged, and our Bay Ocean actually ticks both boxes. You only need to tick one. There's a lot of things that are going through here. This was literally, we're going to turn something around in a couple of weeks in order to get something submitted. It's, we get selected, great. If we don't, we set the platform for the future. But with that, there is, let's see what else we got in here. Part of the Bay Ocean Drive, Dick Creek, which is the bridge that was, the culvert that blew out in 2015-16. ODOT is designing that for 2024. Flower Pot, we just mentioned the construction in 2024. We can substantially state to ODOT that, or excuse me, to USDOT, that not only do we need something, we've already set the groundwork and we've actually been proactive. So grant reviewers like to see proactive things. They don't like to see the knee-jerk reactions. So we look at long-term planning as how do we set ourselves up for the next grant? And we're going to go after a feasibility study to truly understand what that is. The larger grants require a benefit cost analysis. And if we need to determine, do we see more benefit than the cost associated with it? We don't need to do that for a feasibility analysis. So if we had to do the BCA benefit cost, we wouldn't even contemplate that. But we think we can pull together a grant for both of those in a very short time frame. All the nuances of trying to apply on the federal website, there's nothing simple about trying to apply for that. We've worked through all the kinks. We've got a lot. We just completed the NOAA grant and the culvert program that we just got approved for authorization. That should actually be fairly simple as we go into this next grant. So that's looking for a request to have authorization to submit for the RAISE grant, Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity.
Phew.
Long story.
Thank you, Chris. Questions or comments, commissioners?
I think that's terrific. Yeah, I'm glad. I appreciate your forward thinking about if we don't receive these grants, it sets us up in a better position for the next time. And I think a feasibility study sounds like a good idea. And I'm fascinated by the demographics that you uncovered that make us more eligible. So I'm fully supportive. Thank you.
Yeah.
If I may add one more item.
Go ahead.
So I know going through this process, as we start going through the short-term rental program, and every once in a while there is some lobbying effort to try to remove the 30% TOT money that the road department receives. So the Nesco emergency egress route may not have been built. The Cape Mears Loop Road, currently under construction, may not have been built. Flower Pot may not have been built. The Myrtle Creek may not be built. When we start looking at this grant, yes, it's free right now, but if we need to do matches in the future, none of that would be available if that TOT money was not available to the road department. So even though it's not addressing the road directly in front of somebody's short-term rental, it's addressing the roads to their locations. You can't get to Cape Mears without going across the Bay Ocean, etc.
Thank you, Chris. So would you just, the last time I looked at the budget, it looked to me like TLT was up to 1/4 of your budget. So will you talk about that just briefly?
It's actually sitting about 1/3 of the budget right now. So the TLT's been going up. So if you strike out all of the TLT funds and you strip that out, we know that the federal timber dollars, we don't get state timber. The federal timber dollars are mostly non-existent. They're not the $8 million that we received in the past. Now our operating budget's about $4 million. That is all gone, and that's in 2017 dollars. So you strip out the TOT, we're basically in operations. We have no ability to handle capital projects. We've got no ability to do the nesting. We've got no ability to do anything other than maintain roads. With the current trying to take money away from counties that ODOT is trying to lobby for right now, that Commissioner Scar had just mentioned, that would also further reduce our ability to pave. But almost our entire paving would go away. We could pay for equipment, salaries, and storm response. Average, we spend about 20% of our time dealing with storm response. When these things were set up, when the TOT was set up and we had a bond previously, that's been expired. All that occurred in the time frame when we didn't have the storms. We had a long period of time we had no storms. All that was set up prior to a lot of storms. TOT is current, is still in that process of storms. You'll hear 2015 for a while. So the money that really should be going to the roads, the money that should be going towards the general maintenance and paving and things of that nature, larger projects, we needed to use money to deal with storm response, the matches to FEMA. And we survive on grants. FEMA requires we have to pay 25% for every FEMA dollar we get. We get reimbursed 75%. This US DOT grant, 20% match. None of that would be available without the tourism tax. The work that we did, should we need to do significant work on Sand Lake Road, which you just saw, if we have to do that, we're not entirely sure how we can do that if we had no TOT. So TOT funds is very significant for our budget, 30% of our budget. Take out 30% of our ability to do work, just not very good for the community. A little proactive lobbying on my part.
Well, thank you. I haven't heard anyone on our board talk about reducing the 30% TLT dedication to roads. And in fact, I think it's in our ordinance. We made that commitment to voters in 2014.
Right.
Yeah, it does get brought up by members of the community every time we talk about TLT, but I agree, it's not something that the board has on our minds and has discussed in any way, shape, or form. We completely understand that roads are vital to everything we do in Tillamook County for those who live there, as well as the industry that is supported by our visitors, who are the folks who live here and own businesses, so it's crucial.
So Chris, I appreciate very much that public service announcement on TLT and how much that means to public works, and it is. To me personally, that 30% of the TLT that goes to public works for road maintenance, things of that nature, that's like a third rail to me. I mean, I think a commissioner would have to think very carefully about even talking about something like that.
Thank you.
You're doing great work with the very little money that you have, and to consider taking away that a third of your budget, basically, it just does not make sense to me at all. It does not. I appreciate very much you reminding us that this used to be called the Tiger Grant. I remember Tiger Grants. I think we were talking about Tiger Grants on the Cape Mears Loop Road at one point, as well as a lot of other big projects, but then that 50% match came up, and we can't do a 50% match. We can't. So I appreciate very much that this new grant process understands that rural counties are just that. We're very rural. We don't have a lot of resources, and yet we do have, especially on the coast, we have some big projects that we need to move forward with. So appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, and I'm completely in support. I think my fellow commissioners have listed lots of good reasons why, and I agree. So I think we are ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, in consideration of grant application to the U.S. Department of Transportation's programs Rebuilding America Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity, called a RAISE grant, I would move approval.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. All of those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, we will work to get back in numerical order to the best of our ability, although then we've already done 13, 14. But we're going to 12, which is discussion and consideration of a follow-up staff report advising a 30-day extension regarding a solid waste violation at 22250 East Beaver Creek Road, Cloverdale, Tillamook County Township, 3S Range 9W, Section 6, Tax Lot 1200. We have David McCall with us, our Solid Waste Program Manager.
Yes, good morning. I think it's still morning.
It is, but we're trucking right along.
Yeah, and I know you saved the best for last. Just one small correction. So it's sections. Totally set.
Nice try.
Yeah. Just one strict. It is section 16, not 6.
Oh dear, do I need to restate that, or is that okay?
No,
as
you're
amended?
good.
Okay, thank you.
We all know what we're talking about. So, commissioners, as just kind of a background or to refresh your memories from the pre-Christmas festivities. We were here in December, I think it was 21st, and I presented you with a history of a property on East Beaver Creek where an estimated at least 200 tires have been accumulated and required to remove, and unpermitted road approach was built, we believe, using those tires as a base, at least on the sides and things. And at the property is owned by Ms. Judith DeBray. Her son, Warren Scott Hunter, was here at that meeting. And the result of the meeting was that the commissioners decided, in accordance with Ordinance 4, to give the property owner 30 days to remove all of the materials in the unpermitted road approach, to remove from the property and properly dispose of all of the exposed tires not associated with operating vehicles and trailers, including tires in the overbank and the right-of-way, and to dispose of all these materials at a permitted facility and present the receipts for disposal. That was the end result. The next day, I sent a certified letter to the property owner because she was not here, summarizing this for her to make sure she was aware. That letter was not accepted, but came back. I went down on January 23rd, Chris Lady and Chris Lawfulmaker and myself went down and did a follow-up inspection, so following the 30 days to see what had happened. We found that, so there's a 40-yard drop box, a little history with this. The county owns several drop boxes. If a private hauler were to provide a drop box, there is a rental fee for that. Aaron Averill reached out to me and we discussed that in light of the circumstances, I'd provide one of our county drop boxes for this at no charge to help the property owner with this. So Aaron brought a drop box down there. What we found with that drop box was there. It had been filled with tires. I would guess in the neighborhood of 100 tires. You know, it's hard to count them when they're that full. 80, 100, 110, you know, somewhere in there. But that drop box had not been removed. We could still see, and you have in my staff report a picture showing tires around there. I'm guessing at least 60 further tires still there. That afternoon, Mr. Hunter came to our office, and as he was submitting a road approach permit, he also told me, oh yeah, he's working on this within a week, because I informed him that I was going to report back to you today, and he told me by then he would have every tire would be gone, everything would be finished, no problem. I went down yesterday and found that everything is exactly as it was last week. Nothing had been done. I also spoke with Mr. Averill and asked him why he hadn't picked up those tires, you know, the box that was there, and swapped it out. And he said no one ever told him it was full. So the property owner did not tell, they filled the box, but they didn't have it emptied. I don't know why. Mr. Averill told me that he had not been paid for it yet, so maybe that was part of the reason. Yesterday, I called Ms. DeBray, or called their home line, not knowing who I would get, and spoke with Ms. DeBray on the phone. She was there. She informed me that, I hope I'm not violating any HIPAA, but she told me this on the phone, that she had had a stroke and was having mobility issues, and that's why she hadn't been around and hadn't been out. But she thought everything had been cleaned up and taken care of. I informed her no, that hadn't. And the reality is the tires are still there on the property. Even though they've been collected and moved around, there's really no difference from when they were along the bank and picked up and moved over and made to the other side of the property where they were made into a fence, and now they've been moved to a different part of the property where they're in a drop box there. They're still on the property. They haven't been disposed of as you had instructed. They've just been moved around. You know, we've received no receipts, well, because no costs have been incurred because they haven't disposed of it. When I wrote the staff report last week, I thought that progress had been made and progress was going to be made. Here a week and a day later, I am of a different opinion, and you know, I'm stressing to you that I guess some visual move-arounds have been performed, but progress has not been made. And so I did recommend to you that you extend the deadline by 30 days in light of that. I'm not going back on that, but I just want you to be aware that the progress which I thought had been made has not really been made, and it has come to a standstill. So when I spoke with Ms. DeBray yesterday, I also informed her you would be having this meeting this morning. She was going to tell her son that, you know, the meeting was going to be here. He's not here today, so I don't know if they communicated or not. I understand that she's having mobility issues, so I can understand maybe she's not able to come. But I did inform her of this, and she was aware of the requirements to remove everything. That's my summary for you.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions?
Sure. Thank you, David, and thanks for the update that things have not progressed since you wrote the report and put this on our agenda. I'm wondering if there's it seems like if we grant the extension, there's the possibility, however remote, there's the possibility that they'll finish the project. If we do not grant the extension and call it now, is there any benefit or drawback to that? Is there any benefit or rather, is there any drawback to granting the extension?
I think the only drawback to granting the extension is the message it sends for other cases that it's okay to pretend like you're doing something, because the commissioners will fall for it. Just like Mr. McCall fell for it, just like Officer Jungling fell for it, just like the judge fell for it, you know. I think that's the real drawback.
So I am reluctant to offer an additional 30 days, but I'm wondering what our options might be. If we're going to offer an additional 30 days, I would like to put some constraints on what needs to be done and put a separate timeline on those. Such as I would like, if we're going to offer a 30-day extension, I would like the first week he has to pay for and get that dumpster that's full of tires dumped, and then give him the next week to refill that dumpster with all the appropriate tires that need to come off the property. I appreciate very much Mr. Mahana coming in this morning and offering public testimony. I think a third requirement within the next 30 days, if we were to do something like that, would be, and I'm not sure this is even possible, the removal of the illegal road approach. I'm not sure what would be entailed there in order to, so are we talking about the tires basically?
Well, so it's our understanding that when he built this unpermitted road approach, at the bottom of it, tires were placed in there, and then rocks or dirt or whatever materials were put on top of it to make it into it's probably a 40-foot drop from the road down to the bottom of the property. And that has tires in it and unknown fill material. It could be that it's structurally sound. It's possible that it's not. You know, Chris Lady's on the phone. He can speak more to it, how important it is to know what the status of that is so it protects the road that's there. You know, the reason it was required to be removed was because it's our understanding there were tires under it, and you need to remove those tires. I mean, this is excavator work, basically.
Okay. So I'm going to turn to Bill. So, Mr. Sargent, if we do something like that, so the first checkpoint's going to be a week from now. If we offer him an additional 30 days, first checkpoint a week from today, he pay for and get the tires in the dumpster done. First of all, can we do that? Second of all, if he doesn't meet that requirement within the next week, what are our options?
Well, I mean, your eventual option is, the viable one, I think, is Chris Lawfulmaker and Mr. Lady are gonna go out there and have to do it themselves, and then we're gonna put a lien on the property.
Okay,
And
that's what I was thinking.
And,
Okay.
and I want to talk for Chris Lawfulmaker, but, he's been following this pretty closely.
Yep.
I did talk to him out there at the shop, and he did mention, and Chris could maybe follow up on this lady better than I could, but as far as going out there and trying to do that work right now, there might be some weather-related problems with doing that right now. I'm not sure that they, could get right out there and do that. I'm not lobbying you to give the guy a little more time, but I don't think that's a practical matter. The tires will get removed by the road department in the next 30 days, I think. Chris was indicating, need a weather break to really go in and do that. But that's your ultimate option.
Yeah. Chris?
So what we can do even today is we have the ability to go in and remove the road approach. It never would have been permitted in its current configuration, even if they used the proper material. So we can remove the material out towards the right-of-way line and take it down to native ground. So we could do that today. The issue with that is by wiping that out, it limits his ability, the landowner's ability, or the relative to remove the material out. The county would not use that approach. We would ask, the neighbor for access to get in there and take the material out that way. So the road approach we wouldn't use. It's too steep for us. We find that we'd end up using too much manual labor. It would not be a good thing. There is a weather issue that's associated with that. The ground being spongy, soft, we'd come in there and possibly do more damage trying to get that out without doing a lot of manual labor, and I really don't want to hurt anybody's backs with that. But we can do that when if the weather allows us to do that, and we're not keeping a bridge from falling in the river or tearing up Sand Lake Road. But we can go out there and remove the road approach right now. That would be a disadvantage for the landowner to remove the tires.
All right, and I'm not sure I want to go there yet and put your crew at risk of more work when they don't need more work. One other question I have, so they have applied for a new road approach permit, a more legal road approach permit, is that correct?
So they did apply. They've never applied for one in the past. Right. So they've even come in the office and they've never applied. So we wrote a letter that basically said they need to remove all material down to the native ground. And what is out there is not permittable. In its current configuration, if none of this had existed, we would not issue that permit in its current configuration, even if they use good material. That's not to say that it can't be done in the future. There would need to be some conditions that would need to be met in order to meet safety, such as removing a lot of trees for sight distance. So yes, they did apply for a permit. Right now we can't approve it without the conditions of getting that back to where it's supposed to be, native ground.
That's what I wanted to hear. So even though they have applied for a road approach permit, until this is resolved, that new road approach permit would not even be considered. Is that correct?
That's correct. So the other component of that, when you apply for a road approach, it's a little over $500, and that is your application fee to go through the process. That starts our review to go out and look at it, helps to pay our staff time. We have no ability for fines or anything like that nature. We rely on solid waste, we rely on community development, and we rely on the sheriff's office. There's an unapproved road approach, that fine, it's not a fine, but it's a fee of double. So it's another $500+. So to even move forward with that consideration, he needs to pay the additional money to pay double for the road approach fee, and he needs to remove all the material back to native ground. And then we can discuss a future road approach. Future road approach would have to resolve safety issues that are out there at its location.
Okay. So Chris, just let me ask you, what do you think about this approach? If we offer an additional 30 days with some other stipulations, first of all, that first week, he's got to get that dumpster paid for and the tires disposed of properly. Give him maybe the next, maybe we go through that 30 days and make sure that he gets his unapproved road approach completely back to normal as it was before. And if that, we're running out of time. We cannot continue just to let this go. It's gone long enough, even though now that the commissioner's involved, I think we're starting to see some action, which is appreciated. But we can't let this continue. We cannot, because if we allow continuing delays in this, then in the future, we're gonna be in the same boat, and we do not wanna be there with people in the future that have these same kind of issues. So what do you think about that type of a process?
So my opinion, and certainly it's a board decision, but my opinion is if there's a week and he doesn't, there's gotta be a receipt. We don't have the receipt that shows he's done this. There can be no arbitrariness about it. You gotta have a receipt. That dumpster's gotta be moved and emptied. If it's not moved and emptied, and the receipt showing his expenses have been paid for the proper disposal of those tires. If that doesn't exist within a week, then I think the definitive action, definitive, he does this, definitive, if he doesn't do this, the road department goes out there as soon as we can with the deputy, and we remove the road approach. He can still proceed forward, it's just gonna be more complicated for him to do that. But there's an instantaneous, if you don't do it, we remove your approach.
Okay.
It's a consequence.
Okay, all right. And he's going to have to, the property owner will have to pay for the work that Public Works does to remove that approach, correct? He would be billed.
That's
He
correct.
would be billed for that?
That's correct, and that is by state law.
We'd eventually get a lien on the property.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know, I mean, as a practical matter,
Yep.
who knows, maybe they'll hit the lottery like we all will, but it seems unlikely given the history that, they're gonna pay the road department.
We have to place a lien,
Yeah.
sure.
So
I appreciate your thoughts.
Yeah, the way ordinance 4 structures this is that if the county does go in and abate the violation, then we get together all the costs, we come to the board and present those costs, at which point the board accepts the costs and requires the property owner to pay those within 60 days. If it's not paid within 60 days, then it goes to the lien.
Okay.
So if I understand correctly, there's the tires and the road approach. The tires, some of them are currently in the dumpster that can be dumped and more tires could be placed in the dumpster. The road approach will require a backhoe, and the road approach is something we could not do immediately because of our workload and the weather. Is that correct? Or am I think I heard two things and I'm unclear on the timeline of whether we could or could not go out there now and clear the road approach.
We can go out now and clear the road approach. We can do that from the road surface. In order to access 40 feet down to where the property is, to where all those tires are, is we would seek permission from the adjacent landowner to come in and remove the tires. That would require some weather cooperation. So we have those two. One, we can go out now and remove the road approach. Two, in order to remove the tires, removal of the tires, the larger component that's associated with that really does need some weather to cooperate with that. We have the authority by ORS to go out there and deal with the road. So ordinance, the solid waste ordinance, we have the ability right now today to go out there and take out that road approach because it's in the right of way according to ORS.
Okay, thank you.
But as I understand it, if I can, Commissioner Starr, that hamstrings the property owner's ability to remove the balance of the tires because he has no practical way to get them up to the dumpster or wherever he needs to get them to.
Okay, thank you. Got it.
Without a lot of hand labor.
And so if we give him a week, as has been recommended, that would be if he were to dump the dumpster, show the receipt of it being paid, and to continue his work to remove those tires using the illegal road approach to make that so. With additional milestones, perhaps he has another week in which to fill the dumpster a second time and have it dumped, so that we are working over this 30-day period toward all tires being collected and all tires being properly disposed of, and we have milestones 1, 2, 3, and 4. Each week has a milestone, and as soon as a milestone is not met, then it kicks over to the county, because the county also is gonna have, and if that happens, the first thing the county would do would be to remove the road approach, because that is possible at this time. The county would return at a later date, when weather is agreeable, to go in and remove the rest of the tires, because we can't use their road approach, we would have to do a different way, and we can't do that in this weather. So we have 30 days planning. At any week in that he misses a deal, we go ahead and we become active and we take it over. Is that what I think I'm hearing so far? Commissioner Bell, we have heard very little from you, so I really do want to refer it and give you a chance to weigh in.
Thanks. I think that's a fine approach. I think we all agree the reason we granted the 30 days, the original 30 days in the first place, is because we all agree that it's in the county's best interest and the property owner's best interest for them to do it. And I appreciate that they started. If there's any chance that they can do it in the next 30 days, I think that would be a great outcome. And sideboards of, setting up weekly goals, I think might help. It might be, it requires more management on Dave's part. But I think it's a reasonable approach. I'm not, I guess I'm not encouraged that the work will actually get done in 30 days, but I will hold hope for that. But I want to be clear that if it doesn't get done within this 30 days, there's no more extensions.
Maybe we take smaller bites at the apple. Let's start with 1 week. And so you have to give us some guidelines here on how we notice the family on this.
David, we did it last time, but we had David send them a certified letter that says,
and if they choose not to pick up the letter, we have done our part. Is that
That's
what
right.
I would understand to be correct?
That's
Would it also be beneficial to actually post it at the house?
or David could personally.
No, we'll ask the deputies. I think I saw Matt Kelly was online, so I'm sure he can agree that.
Sorry about that, David.
So I would suggest that it makes sense to do a certified letter and or be given that we have not had that, just starting with a delivery, so that we know that Ms. Bray is also aware, since we are in this strange space of working with not the property owner at this time. So I think it would be great if we were certain that she had received and was aware. I would like to suggest that milestones be set, and David, can you, as commissioners, we have a lot of things on our agenda. I don't know that it makes sense for us to set the milestones and to each week manage the milestones. I think that we have very qualified staff to do that work for us. And if things are moving forward, we're in good stead. So if you can, perhaps, if the commissioners are amenable, we've given some ideas of what we believe are acceptable milestones with getting the tires removed, requiring an additional full dumpster that would be removed the following week, et cetera. And if there are other milestones that you and Chris agree that are appropriate toward the removal of the road approach once the tires are done and that is not needed, if those can be added in perhaps to the following 2 weeks, and go ahead and give a plan that makes sense. I think if commissioners are okay with that, I think we can support, you all doing that piece of the work, setting the milestones for us.
So, Bill, would that be appropriate for them to have the authority of the board to do this? Because I'm concerned, I would want to see that receipt for the dumping of that first dumpster next Wednesday.
I would like David to see that receipt. I do not feel
And
that it
that's
needs
fine.
to be in front of the Board of
Okay.
Commissioners. If you would like David to share that with you,
No,
that's great.
I
But I
was
just
trying to
feel
figure-
like, I agree a receipt needs to be seen. I don't know
Yes.
that it needs to be in front of the commissioners. I think there is an aspect here where we need to make this decision, which is we agree that 30 days is, an extension is reasonable. We agree that each week must have a measurable and acceptable milestone, and that between Chris and David, that they have the better project experience to look at this and say what cut would need to be taken each week in order for it to be completed the 30. Those be the milestones that are set, commissioners giving the authority that upon a missed milestone, then we do all bets are off, and we move forward into following ordinance 4 and saying that at that time, the property owner has failed to follow through on their commitments, and we will now, as the county, step in and take care of the abatement. Does that seem fair and reasonable?
Yeah, I think we can say that we agree to the 30-day extension contingent on conditions established by solid waste.
Yeah, and that you're not granting any more extension.
Correct, and that this is the final extension.
I'll work with David on that.
David on that? You good with that, David?
Yeah, and we'll write that up, and then a final version then I'll send to the 3 commissioners, so you've got it in your
Chris, are
files.
you good with that? Chris Lady?
Yes, I'm good with that.
Okay.
I put myself on mute.
Okay.
Okay,
See,
thank
now
you.
you see what I deal with every day.
So we would need a motion that is not the motion on the page, but rather an amended motion. David, are you good with that? Can you come up with the right motion?
Let's see. So, Madam Chair, in consideration of a follow-up staff report advising a 30-day extension regarding solid waste violation at 22250 East Beaver Creek Road, Cloverdale, Oregon. I guess I mean Tillamook County Township 3S, Range 9W, Section 16, Tax Lot number 1200. I move that we allow the 30-day extension with stipulations of weekly check-in points as be determined by County Council, David McCall and Chris Laity. Upon the execution of each of these check-in points, we can continue to move forward on a weekly basis, which is complicated, up to 30 days. Upon the non-compliance with any weekly check-in point, this entire 30-day extension goes away, and we turn this over to Public Works and Solid Waste for further remediation, which could implicate the property in
Implicate the property owner to pay the costs resulting from cleanup activities.
and if that doesn't occur, then it would be a lien on the property.
A heck of a motion.
Yeah, that's
I'm hesitant to second
okay. No, you want me to repeat it?
Be careful, you're gonna have to make the next one.
that. Okay, I second.
Whew, all right, we have a motion and a second.
Oh, my God.
Is there any further discussion?
I hope not. Anybody?
Hearing none. Hearing none, I will call for the vote. All of those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris
Thank
and
you,
David.
Chris, Bill, thank you. You're gonna be intimately involved in this.
Woo! Okay, I believe we have finally reached the last, well, it's not the last item, but it is the last item of substance on our legislative administrative agenda, and that is item number 15. Discussion and consideration of addendum number 3 to sale agreement number 6330 with Audra Jean Raw for property located at Township 1S, Range 9W, Section 29, Tax Lot 01000, Tillamook County. Rachel Haggerty, Chief of Staff.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Hi.
So as you know, the county is under a sale agreement with Audra Raw for the purchase of his 46 acres along McCormick Loop Road. Our intentions here are to secure the property to provide future opportunities for a housing development. Before you is addendum 3, which, addendum 1 captured what was found in the preliminary title report, that there was unclear boundaries for the property, and then that addendum required the seller to complete a boundary survey prior to closing. And further conversations with the seller and the seller's realtor, cash flow is an issue here, and so addendum 3 still requires that the seller ultimately pays for the completion of the survey, but they will provide half of the survey up front, which is a requirement of the surveyor, and then the county will pay the difference when the balance when the survey is completed, but at closing, that amount that the county provided will be reduced from the purchase price. So this is just some paperwork to clean up an arrangement that we're making with the seller to get the survey completed while cash flow is an issue. So it is executed by Audra Raw and ready for your consideration.
Great, thank you. Commissioners?
I think that's a good solution.
Great resolution.
Completely agree, and I think this is one of those steps that we talk about, the challenge of this property for an outside developer is that they're not going to want to wait and work through this level of detail. So it's one of the reasons that it's a great idea for the county to make this developer ready. So I'm in agreement.
Motion. Madam Chair, in consideration of addendum number 3 to sale agreement number 6330 with Audra Jean Raw for property located at Township 15, located at Township 1S, Range 9W, Section 29, Tax Lots 01000, Tillamook County. I would move approval.
A second. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, do we have any board concerns this morning, Commissioners?
Many, but all cold.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do board announcements, and then we will be recessing this meeting to go into an executive session. We do not anticipate coming out of that executive session to make any decisions. So if folks don't necessarily feel like they need to hang around in order to hear me say we are adjourned. So we will go ahead and take care of our announcements. The Commissioners will hold a board briefing on Wednesday, February 1st, 2023 at 2 p.m. to discuss weekly Commissioner updates. The meeting will be held in the Board of Commissioners Meeting Room 106 in the Tillamook County Courthouse, 201 Laurel Avenue, Tillamook, Oregon. The teleconference number is 1-971-254-3149, conference ID 736-023-979#. The Commissioners will attend the annual National Association of Counties Conference February 10th, 2023 through February 14th, 2023 in Washington, D.C. The Tillamook County Annual Public Land Sale Auction will be held on Monday, February 13th, 2023 at 1 p.m. at the Tillamook County Library Main Branch in the Copeland Meeting Room, 1716 3rd Street, Tillamook, Oregon 97141. Registration starts at 12:30 p.m. There are 20 properties for sale. For the list of properties, land sale packets, including maps and auction instructions, please visit the county's website at www.co.tillamook.or.us and click on How Do I /Real Property Sales. So we've moved it from the courthouse steps. The official, we always talk about those. Okay. So with that, Bill, would you please give us the ORS under which we are entering executive session?
Yeah, 196.602, D, to consult with labor negotiation team.
Perfect, thank you. With that, we will recess this meeting at 11:14.